cómo hacerlo. No se preocupen mucho por este gráfico, pero básicamente eso significa, este gráfico dice que la película sale primero en cine, luego en DVD y en VOD, y luego en telepaga como HBO, telepública, y luego de nuevo vuelve a VOD como librería. El problema es que durante mucho tiempo, entonces, hay una ventana donde la película no está disponible. Por ejemplo, entre que termine la ventana VOD y que empieza la librería, no existe esta película en ninguna parte. No la puedo tener porque está pasando por HBO o por algún canal. No la puedo ver. Mientras está en el cine, si tengo, no sé, 3 niños y no quiero salir al cine, no la puedo ver. Entonces, eso me genera a mí una frustración enorme como consumidor de no poder ver algo que se está promocionando en todas partes. Entonces, una forma de combatir la piratería es achicar las ventanas de tiempo, es ofrecer películas disponibles cuando está en el cine a otro precio, pero que la puedo ver desde mi casa con contenido más rico y más evolucionado. Eso funciona. Netflix en Estados Unidos genera más descargas que los sitios piratas hoy día. 33% del ancho de banda de Internet en Estados Unidos está consumido por Netflix, contra solamente el 10% por los sitios piratas. En Asia Pacífico, donde no hay muchos sitios legales, claramente 36% es piratería, ¿sí? Y les dejo este dibujito al final para que para mí resume bastante bien por qué la gente está pirateando. Porque los estudios invierten entre 1/3 y un 50% de la publicidad, del presupuesto de una película en publicidad. Estamos hablando entre 100 y 200 millones a veces por película, para atraer a la gente a que venga a ver la película, pero no les da la oportunidad de poder verla como se debe. Entonces, lo que hace la gente es simplemente saltar por encima de la barrera y buscar la película donde la puede encontrar, que es en Internet. Bueno, muchas gracias y atento a sus preguntas más tarde.
Muchísimas gracias, Mihai, por tu tan dinámica, didáctica y hasta divertida presentación. Para cerrar este panel técnico-jurídico, nos acompaña ahora Sajai Singh. Sajai Singh viene de la India, es socio de la firma J. Sagar Associates de ese país, tesorero de ItechLaw, International Technology Lawyers Association, asesora a sociedades de tecnología emergentes en áreas de inversiones en la India, capitales de riesgo y fondos privados de inversión, joint ventures, alianzas estratégicas y fusiones y adquisiciones. Por favor, bienvenido y muchas gracias, Sajai. Thank you very much.
So let me try. Buenas tardes. So, good evening. I don't know Spanish, so unfortunately I'll have to do the presentation in English. And my presentation will try and summarize the law as it is, but more than the law, more ground realities as they exist in India, and how digital content and the availability and the possibility of creating digital content is very interesting in a very old society, in a very rich heritage, how digital content is changing the paradigm. So let's look at some of the social and historical and the background that India finds itself in, a little bit of the market overview, our Copyright Act, the problem of piracy and why it exists in India, a little bit about presumption or prosumption as they call it, and then I'll conclude. So in India we have a lot of people, and that also creates a lot of fun, but the lot of people is very important because the lot of people that exist in India also create a huge market and also create opportunities for addressing the market. India, just to give you perspective, India has all of these colored regions are different states, and these are about 29 states and union territories. And each one of these states, as I'll go on to the next slide, I'll explain, but each one of these states has a different language. So it's not as simple as moving from, as flying over from Sao Paulo to Montevideo, and the language changes from Portuguese to Spanish. When you fly from Sao Paulo to Montevideo, at least you'll be able to read the signs, because the signs would be in the same, the script will be the same. But in India, when you move from one state to the other, the script changes as well. And when the script changes, the person who moves from one state to the other cannot even read the signs. Therefore, it's very complex, and that sort of creates very interesting paradigms for India. So just some statistics. In India, India is a large country with a lot of people, 1.2 billion people. It is a 5,000-year-old, continuously surviving civilization, unlike Mesopotamia, Egypt, Rome, various other old civilizations that you even had in Latin America, which may not have survived in the form that they existed in. India, the civilization has survived. And therefore, a lot of our content, which we can talk about, a lot of our culture and history, has really come from very age-old habits, customs, and traditions. I mentioned the languages. They're not dialects, which you may understand. There are 18 official languages. English is not one of them. But English serves as a link language when two states communicate with each other. If they're communicating in their own languages, they probably will not understand what the other state is saying. Therefore, they must have an English translation of whatever they are saying when they're communicating with each other. We have about 29 states, 5 union territories, and it's the fourth largest economy of the world and the fastest growing IT superpower of the world. So while China may be the manufacturing base for the world, India is pretty much the services base for the world. Here in Sona America, you have a very large Indian company, TCS, which is doing software development and providing services in the region. So that just shows that India has sort of done a little jump of being a very old civilization, moving on to becoming an IT superpower, having actually adopted technology. And so you have absolutely modern technology and very, very old culture and content available in India. So this is just to give you, again, perspective. Till 1990, India was a closed economy, and it's only from 91 that India has opened up its economy and allowed foreign investment to come in, foreign ideas to come in. Hollywood, which came in some form, has really, over the past, since 91, has slowly made its inroads into India. Earlier, a Hollywood movie would hardly be shown in 1 or 2 cinemas here and there, and they were very old movies. Today, Hollywood content is available the same day as it's globally released in India, sometimes before it's seen in the rest of the world, because India is ahead of America in terms of timing. So that just shows how times have changed since India liberalized its economy. But the important thing is this slide that I'd like to talk about, which really talks about access to technology, access to entertainment that is available in India and in digital content. Because access to computers, access to cell phones I'll talk about in a little bit, but access to computers is very limited, and access to technology, I would say, again, is very limited. There are technology haves and the technology have-nots. The technology haves are people who have the access to technology computers. They may be of a little affluent household. And their dealing with technology and their dealing with content is very different from the have-nots who the government is using technology to access these have-nots, technology have-nots, to give them healthcare, to give them education, to develop, to uplift their existence. So the way that both these haves and have-nots deal with technology is very, very different. Technology access is also very gender dependent. It's also a very male, strong male association with technology. It could also depend on caste, class, the region that you are in. Urban India would provide access to technology more easier than rural India. The second bullet point is also very interesting. We have now what is called Gen Y, Generation Y in India. This generation has really grown up since we liberalized our economy in 91, as I mentioned. And they are the first non-socialist generation of India. India, in 1947, when it got its independence from Great Britain, chose to be a socialist democratic republic. And it leaned towards Russia and USSR for all its ideals. So one of the countries that I feel most comfortable when I travel, because I grew up in a socialist world, is Cuba. Because we also had ration shops when we were growing up, and we all could only get as much food or as many supplies that one family would require. So it kind of brings back memories of childhood. But today's India is very different, and Gen Y has not seen that India. This is the first non-socialist generation. And they have some aspects that really mark them. They are ambitious, they have aspirations, and they have financial freedom. However, Generation Y still comes from a very traditional background and very traditional environment because their parents are not Generation Y. So they've been, in many ways, they haven't let go of the tradition and culture. Also, another thing that was mentioned a little while back, Bollywood is something that is so over-pervasive, and cricket, by the way, but Bollywood is so over-pervasive in our society that that's really the biggest content generators. So whether it be for ideas for gaming, whether it be for just pure entertainment, or for the music industry, we do have a music industry different from Bollywood, but Bollywood is the main source of our music industry. So for all of these, Generation Y still looks at Bollywood. And the other thing about Generation Y is that with the opening up of the Indian economy and with the coming in of Hollywood, the international ideas, their access to global ideas are very strong. They're very much in tune with what their peers are doing in any other country of the world. So they know the technology, they know everything that's available elsewhere, but yet they are in this deep-rooted traditional society. So this is just a slide which shows what India is facing right now, or what a male member of the family faces right now. The market view of India, as I mentioned in terms of computers, just to give you an idea, every 4 out of 100 people own a computer. Again, computer ownership is concentrated in affluent households in urban India. Computer access in rural India or lesser affluent households is through computer kiosks that the government has provided, or private computer cafes that are available. In terms of digital content, as we've already discussed, the medium of distribution that is extremely popular is the cell phone, the mobile phone. And the mobile phone penetration is huge in India, and the mobile phone penetration allows digital content to be distributed to people who may not even be literate or educated. The combining of the social media and various platforms has created a very interesting paradigm in India where people who may not have been educated in the traditional environment are using those platforms for communicating, which is great in many ways, but is also challenging several traditional ideas that Indian society lives in. For example, in a society where arranged marriages was the norm, where a man and woman really were introduced by the parents to actually get married, you have dating sites that are freely available, sites where people can actually meet and communicate with each other. Male and female can freely communicate without any parental guidance, which is huge. I mean, it just is throwing out of the window all the social mores, the norms, morality that India probably stood for. So the new generations, as they go along, will be extremely different from where their parents left off. The media and entertainment sector is very huge in India, primarily because of the lack of other sources of entertainment. Bollywood has really been the main source of entertainment. People spend more money, or the growth of Bollywood is greater than the growth of the Indian economy, primarily because everyone who has a little bit of money goes to some form, either directly to a theater or otherwise, accesses content that is produced by Bollywood. So that's a huge industry. It includes television, which is US dollars 5.76 billion industry in India, radio, which is a $210 million industry in India. I would say in terms of purely Bollywood, it's 1.63 billion last year, and it's supposed to go up to 2.63 billion in 2016. Gaming is an industry that, again, is unique. I'll just mention gaming because it hasn't grown as much as it's grown globally and the US and various other parts of the world. It has some gaming industry in India is very, very unique and very specific. It has a very strong male association. It's primarily men in India who gamble or game on their mobile devices or on the internet. It has a very strong Bollywood connection. So there could be a story idea, a character, something to do with Bollywood or just music. There is a strong entertainment value connected with the gaming. It could be sport-related, like cricket, as I mentioned earlier, but majority it's entertainment, which is Bollywood-related. And gaming is another area where there is a strong piracy that is coming in or available. Now, we do have very fat policemen, and they're not as healthy and good-looking as people in Latin America, but let's talk about the law that exists in India. The Indian Copyright Act, I won't go through the complete statute, but we are a common law jurisdiction and has all the protections that you would be familiar with. But the one that I would like to talk about is literary works are protected, because I'll come to that in a minute. And these are the rights that a copyright holder has to reproduce the work, to publish the work, to perform the work, to make somebody else, to have translations, to allow someone else to work with that. These rights are exclusive except for certain rights in certain situations where either the creator is employed by someone else, where the Copyright Act says that if you are employed with someone else and during the course of employment you create some content, then the content belongs to your employer, or where you've assigned the copyright. There are fair use, we have the fair use concept under Section 52 of the Indian Copyright Act, which allows you to make copies of a copyrighted product for certain fair use provisions. The tenure of the copyright is provided here 60 years during the lifetime and 60 years after the death. I have all this material, all this information in the material that I provided, so you could have a look at it over there. Enforcement is through the courts or the Copyright Board. These are, I mentioned the penalties that are available. Again, I won't delve in these too much because it's all available in the material. Literary work that I had mentioned includes computer programs, tables, compilations, including computer databases. And this is where a lot of the digital content may find itself and find protection under the Copyright Act. In terms of the fair use concept for computer programs, it's slightly different for other copyrighted material. Again, it's mentioned over here and in your material. You could take a backup copy of the material, the copyrighted material. But the interesting point that I want to spend a few minutes is on the piracy issue. And why do we have a piracy problem? We don't have as large a piracy problem as maybe other parts of the world, but we do have, and I think it's a socio-economic or a psychological issue, and it may be worthwhile to speak about it for a few minutes. So that's why I thought I will just spend a few minutes on this slide. One, digital content is very easy to be pirated or to make very good copies of. It's very easy to make copies of digital content. But more than that, what are the socio-economic drivers of piracy in India? Firstly, in terms of the concept of piracy of copyrighted material, it's not something that people understand as being a huge issue because it's not tangible material that is being stolen. If somebody in a country ridden with poverty where a majority of the people live in rural India and are poor, if you take away something that is of value that is in a person's hand which he can hold, that's supposed to be a bigger crime or a larger crime than something that no one can touch, feel, or see. So the policeman, in terms of the enforcement, the policeman will give priority to a murder, to a theft of jewelry, than to somebody stealing some copyrighted material. Again, we don't have a police force with a population of 1.2 billion. We don't have a police force that can also address robbery and theft in a household plus copyright piracy, because they're just, in terms of pure numbers, they're just too many people to the policemen. Then the issue is the education of the policemen. It's not as well done as it should be done, which would allow them to go out and catch criminals. And finally, in terms of even the person who is going to be the rights holder, who's going to be enforcing the rights, he thinks even if he's going to go to the police, there's very little that he's going to get. He'll have to explain what it is. To actually see the material is very difficult. You have to go online, show. It's very hard to, it's an uphill task to get any justice because the people just involved in the enforcement machinery will just not understand. So he also doesn't take any action. So all of that in terms of the enforcement causes big issues. But in terms of the other issues, in terms of literacy, one of the key issues would be that if people are not literate, why would they even make the market for copy of pirated products should be low? But it isn't, because for illiterate people, audio-visual equipment or audio-visual education or delivery of content is far easier than the written word or giving them a book to read. So therefore, in an illiterate environment, it's easier for people to gravitate towards audiovisual content. Also, for an illiterate person, it's very hard to distinguish between a copyrighted product versus a pirated product. And quality also, they are not able to distinguish as well as other people would be able to. Poverty is another aspect which creates a big problem, because it's easy to get money selling or creating content, pirated content, and getting money for it. Poor enforcement, I've already mentioned. Lack of infrastructure, because India is so large and the urban areas where enforcement may be a little bit better, it's hard to push that enforcement and infrastructure into the rural area. So a pirate could actually be in the rural area and supply material to the urban area. So all these issues kind of